Cette semaine, je voulais vous présenter le logiciel Ecamm que j'utilise pour faire la diffusion. C'est un petit bout, je vous en ai pas parlé. Ecamm a été fondé par deux frères jumeaux non identiques dans la région de Boston. Donc, Glenn et Ken sont les deux développeurs sur l'application Ecamm Live, une application 100% Mac qui permet
Et il
de
n'y en
faire
a
de la...
pas d'autres. Ben, il y en a peut-être une autre,
Ben ouais.
mais sur Mac, il y a OBS qui marche comme excusez-moi, je vais le dire, qui marche comme une envie d'aller à la selle,
Ouais,
qui
un mal de
fonctionne pas
ventre.
très bien. Ouais,
C'est ça.
exact.
Donc, vous avez OBS. C'est l'équivalent d'un OBS, mais plus, parce que dans les dernières versions qu'ils ont mis en ligne, il y a maintenant une intégration à Zoom. Donc, ce que je vous ai proposé, parce qu'ils ont annoncé la version 4.4 bêta 1, même bêta 2, là, 15 minutes avant d'arriver en onde. J'ai une présentation qui va vous pouvoir vous donner une meilleure idée de ce qui est dans cette version-là. Donc, je vais y aller avec un dénommé Alec, qui a une chaîne YouTube qui s'appelle Take One Tech. Il fait énormément de revues du produit d'Ecamm. Il l'utilise au quotidien. Il fait de la formation. Il est spécialisé en audio-vidéo. Donc, j'ai fait un petit montage des principales annonces du produit. Et je vais aussi revenir un petit peu en arrière dans la version 4.3 qui était juste avant, avec certaines améliorations qu'ils ont apportées. Fait que ça va faire un petit peu un tour de roue de ce que le logiciel permet de faire.
Puis, je veux juste dire quelque chose pour ceux qui n'ont pas d'idée à quoi ça peut ressembler. Ceux qui ont déjà joué avec GIMP,
Oui.
OK? Ça se présente un peu comme ça, dans le sens que GIMP, tu sais, les gens qui étaient habitués qu'Adobe, tu installes Photoshop, c'est tout dans une fenêtre, puis il n'y a rien qui, tu sais. Tu installes Ecamm, puis là, tu te retrouves avec un paquet de modules dans l'écran que tu peux faire à peu près ce que tu veux. Tu peux fermer un module, le garder ouvert, le tasser dans un autre écran. Et c'est un peu déroutant au départ parce que tu fais comme OK, mais je suis habitué à une fenêtre, un petit côté encadré. Mais
Oui.
dès que tu commences à l'utiliser, tu fais comme hey, c'est pratique ça, je peux mettre ça là, puis ce bout-là, je vais le mettre dans l'autre fenêtre. Puis
Effectivement.
ce bout-là est très intéressant.
Donc, on va écouter la petite vidéo. Là. J'ai fait enfin un montage là, parce qu'elle durait quand même très longtemps. Et je vous dis tout de suite, là, le débit de la voix est très rapide. Je n'ai pas accéléré la vidéo. Il est comme ça. Donc, attachez-vous parce qu'il y a beaucoup de contenu, beaucoup de mots dans cette vidéo-là.
Ecamm Live Beta 4.4 has just been released and it's got some amazing new features, actually. I think that once
Australien?
again, dare I say it, it's a bit of a game changer.
Américain, mais probablement australien ou Angleterre, là, mais il est aux États-Unis.
Mm-hmm.
Find myself saying that on pretty much every major beta release, but that is the way that Ecamm goes. They listen to the community and they add in the features that people are asking for. And they've added in some really pretty pro-level features this time round. Not that they didn't last time with the Zoom update, but there you go. It's just another great one.
Donc, dans la version précédente, on avait introduit l'intégration Zoom. Donc, on a carrément une intégration directe avec Zoom à l'intérieur du logiciel. On va avoir en partie là, une démonstration.
Ce qui est génial quand tu veux gérer des gens que tu veux inviter dans ton live ou ces choses-là.
Tu veux gérer la mise en page, la diffusion.
Mm-hmm.
Donc, le logiciel permet d'avoir toutes les sources de caméras et après ça, d'être capable de les gérer.
Without me waffling on any further, let's just get into it. We've got things related to cameras, we've got audio, we've got things related to Ecamm for Zoom, and a whole load of other tweaks and some things under the hood that you're probably not going to notice, but will just lead to improvements. So let's go through and take them one by one, shall we? It seems obvious. So we'll start with this new feature that they've added in called Live Motion. Now, if you are familiar with Keynote, they have the Magic Move feature, which enables things to just sort of seamlessly move from one position on the screen to another, or rather in your slides. They also have the same thing in PowerPoint, and it's called Morph. Well, now we've got that as a transition effectively in Ecamm, and it's called Live Motion. Now, what this does is it basically looks for the position of your camera or your overlays or your shapes or whatever kind of overlay you've got. And if you are transitioning to another scene, what it will do is it will just move them seamlessly across. So, for example, I'm in this scene right now with my camera front and center, but if I switch over to another scene where my camera is somewhere else, you'll see now we get this little transition of my camera moving across. It's that simple. And the thing that's great about it is
On se crée des besoins, là, Patrice. C'est comme, tu sais que tu vas avoir des commandes, là.
Oui, puis là, il faut changer les scènes en conséquence, mais bon, c'est disponible.
Amazing. So let's just see where you activate this from. If I go into my live demo mode for a moment, you can see all of my
Donc, vous voyez, vous allez voir le logiciel Ecamm en action. Donc, vous voyez carrément son écran pendant qu'il travaille.
Windows, a couple there that you might not recognize, or maybe one or two. But up in the top here, you've got the options, and then you see this transition. Now, this can be changed on a scene-by-scene basis. So some of them you may want to use the live motion, some of them you may not. But the default transition before always used to just be cross-dissolve. So it would just cross-dissolve from one scene to another. So that was always the default before. Now, you can come into your settings here, and if you go into your general,
ça va être pour toutes les transitions.
I was already in it. If you go into your video, here you can see the default transition. And as I say before, that used to be cross-dissolve. So now you may want to just change that to live motion if you want to take advantage of this effect. Now, the way that this works then is, as I say, you can just basically build scenes out, put things in one place. If I was to just duplicate this scene for a minute here, and let's go back to that main scene, I'm just going to quickly copy my camera, and let's just put it into that new scene there, and then we'll just make it a different shape. We could also make it a different rotation as well, so let's add a little bit of perspective, and let's add a little bit of rotation. Obviously, that's not potentially a great looking scene, but nevertheless, if I now just go back to my main scene, what you'll see is that is going to transition back to there. Obviously, it works when you've got scenes that have got multiple people in it. Exactly. So if I was to go back to, let's say this one here, I've got a scene set up with 2 people. Let me just add a Zoom participant in for a moment, and then I'm just going to drop them into there. Oh, they just dropped in as it was. So let's say you've got a scene like this, and then you want to do something where you've got the 2 of you and a screen share. You can now sort of seamlessly move over from one to the other. Now, what you'll notice there, though, is that this overlay here is a screen share overlay, and that's actually not on the first scene. So the only thing that is doing the transition here is these 2 cameras, and they are the ones that are sort of seamlessly moving from one to another. Meanwhile, this thing is just happens to be there on the next scene. The next thing that's been added, and I mentioned right at the top that there are some real pro-level features in here, and one of the features that's been added in is support for PTZ cameras, and that
Donc,
le contrôle de caméra avec les toggles, gauche-droite, zoom et autres. What?
Tout, checkez ça.
Is pan, tilt, zoom. That is these cameras that have the ability to move left and right, move up and down, and zoom in and out. And you can get, full-on PTZ controllers that have got a little joystick. You can switch between multiple different cameras that you've got connected, and then you can control them all like that. Well, now we've just got it built into Ecamm. And they've done something really interesting with it, which I'll come on to it in a moment. But let's just take a look at the feature first off. What you'll find is that, and you may have seen it in a screen demo that I did, live demo mode. What happens is when you plug in a camera that has PTZ capability, you will see this little window pop up down here, or wherever it pops up. But this is the controller for your PTZ camera. You've got zoom in and out. You've got the pan and tilt, up and down, left and right, and then you've got different presets that you can save for that as well. You've also got AI tracking, if that's available, such as in the OBSBot cameras and some of the other ones. You've got AI tracking built in, and so you can turn that on and off and choose the sort of framing and things like that. And then you can change the speed of it. So let's take a little look at that in action. I'm going to change over to a scene that's using a PTZ camera. This is an OBSBot Tiny 2. I've actually got a whole bunch of OBSBots around, but this is the Tiny 2 that we're looking at the moment over here. Now, if you'll notice, it's obviously taking this side shot, but what I can do is, because we're in live demo, you can see my actions on here as well. I can zoom in, I can zoom out, and I can move left, and I can move right with it like that. You'll also notice
tu peux définir le nombre de degrés à laquelle il bouge.
So if I just go to preset 1 and click on save, let's say I want it to be just over there, and click on save. Now I can move it somewhere else. Let's say I move it up over to here, show you my my lights and my trailing wires. Well, let's get those out of shot. And then if I click on here to save that as preset number 2 and click on save, now we've got that particular shot saved. So now what I can do is I can change back to preset 1 and click on recall, and it will take us straight back to that preset 1. I can do the same with preset 2, click on recall, and it will take us back there again. So you can see that we've got quite a lot of presets in there. We've got 10 for that particular camera. Now, the real genius that I think they've added in here, obviously, when I've been using these cameras before, I've had a secondary device that I would use to control them, to put them in the various positions. And what that means is they're either just embedded into a single scene in Ecamm, which is basically the OBSBot camera, a bit like I've got here, effectively, this scene. But then I would just use another app or the Stream Deck to then move the OBSBot into a different position. What they've done, though, is they've embedded these presets so that you can basically use them as placeholder cameras as well. So if we are down here in our camera switcher, and just a quick refresh in the camera switcher, you see all of your different camera sources here, but you also have this concept of placeholder cameras, which is where you can just put a placeholder in a scene and then you can assign any camera to that. Well, now what we've got is if I click on here to add a new placeholder camera, what you'll see here is that in here we've got OBSBot Tiny 2, and what it shows us though is all of those presets, which means that we can have this one to be preset number 1, and then we can duplicate it, add another one I should say, and then we're going to make this one placeholder number 2 down here. If I click the right place, that might help. OBSBot Tiny 2 StreamCam preset number 2.
Wow.
So now we've basically got, this one is preset 1 and this one is preset 2. You might wonder why they look kind of the same. The reason is because obviously it can't change where the camera is actually looking at the time, but just know that
c'est ça, parce qu'il est en train de regarder, t'envoies le flux live de ce qu'il fait
là. The great
là.
thing is it's going to actually move the camera when you switch to a scene that's got that in it. So let's just create a new scene then. I'll go back to, let's say, this one. So this is the scene that has, at the moment, it's got camera C, but let's change that to camera G, which is the one that we've got with this particular position here. Somehow, how have we got that? Let me just come back here. I think it's because it's zoomed in, isn't it? Hang on. Yeah, there we go. Somehow I'd click the zoom. So that is position 1 of that particular camera. So now what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to just create another scene. So I'll duplicate this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this one to camera H. And of course, camera H is that position 2. So now what we've got effectively is 2 separate scenes in Ecamm, but that are both linked to the same camera, but just with a different position. And now you'll see that if I come over here, front right was the one that was the Tiny 2 on position A, and this one was the one that was position 2. So now if I click back to this scene, you'll see that the camera is obviously going to come back to position A, and then that's going to go back to position 2. So it means you can really build in these presets into your whole production.
Puis là, il montre des pannes, mais ça peut être un zoom, tu sais, genre un zoom large sur les 2 personnes sur la caméra. Là, on s'entend, là, tu m'as vu venir, hein?
Oui.
Fait que là, tu as un zoom des deux personnes, puis la scène 2, tu as un zoom sur une personne, la scène 3, tu as un zoom sur l'autre personne, puis là, tu peux passer d'un à l'autre avec la même caméra sans avoir à... Hey, ça, c'est fucking cool.
Oui, puis beaucoup de clients de Ecamm sont des gens qui travaillent pour des églises aux États-Unis où ils diffusent, ils broadcastent les célébrations en direct. Et là, ça ouvre l'opportunité de dire, OK, je mets des caméras PTZ dans ces salles-là.
Et là, tu vois le monde chanter.
Puis c'est ça, ben, ils peuvent faire un montage live qui va être hyper professionnel avec des équipements qui ne sont pas excessivement dispendieux, puis un setup qui est quand même assez cool. Il y a même un gars qui contrôle tout à distance de son sous-sol, là. Il travaille de chez eux, les caméras sont IP, sont reliées probablement peut-être en VPN avec un logiciel, et le gars, il contrôle tout le son. Ah ouais, tout. Puis il n'est pas obligé d'être sur place, il peut travailler remote, puis il peut redupliquer dans d'autres endroits. Là. Il peut dire, OK, je vais avoir mon setup pour le A, le B, le C, puis je vais en faire 3 dans ma journée. Ouais.
Scene set up with all these different views with different cameras pointing in different directions, all using the placeholder cameras. And then as you're sort of switching your scenes, the camera is doing its thing and moving. There is a whole list of PTZ cameras it supports from OBSBot, Insta360 Link, UVC, Visca. I've never heard of those, honestly. And also NDI cameras as well. So if you've got NDI cameras working over a network, then you can control those.
C'est ça. Ecamm est compatible NDI. NDI est intégré. C'est un protocole qui permet au niveau du vidéo d'être contrôlé à distance en haute
Ouais.
définition. Donc, c'est déjà built-in. Et pour ce qui est des caméras, si jamais il y a des besoins particuliers, les développeurs sont ouverts à en ajouter d'autres caméras, bien évidemment, selon les
Ben,
besoins.
tu vois, mes caméras Apple, là, sont toutes ça, là, PTZ,
Oui,
NDI,
ben oui,
tout. Là. C'est comme...
effectivement.
As well. Next up, then, is some audio enhancements. And once again, these are things that a lot of pro audio folks have been requesting. So
Ça,
let's
c'est
start
vraiment
with
cool.
them. The first one is the ability to map individual channels of a multi-channel audio input to either mono, left, or right. So if you've got something like the Rodecaster Pro 2
Pour les
or 1,
musiciens, surtout. Là.
where it allows you to feed
Rodecaster
a multi-channel,
intégré à
you may want to sort of
What?
map those to the left and right, or you may have some other sort of external mixer, or indeed a virtual mixer on your computer. Now, the way that this works is if we go into demo mode again, and you'll see here in the sound levels window, if you are using a device that has multi-track capability, you're going to see this extra little icon just over here. And what happens is if you click on that, you're going to see all of the different channels that are available to you coming in from that particular mixer. And then you can go through and assign channels 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and so on, however many channels you've got. And
Donc,
as you can see here,
Pro,
you can assign them
Rodecaster
to either
Duo,
left or right
intégré.
or mono, or indeed have them completely off. So that is the multi-channel function. And as I say, if you are somebody
qu'il y a une
who
mise à jour
knows what
récente
that
du
is for,
Rodecaster qui a
you'll be
ajouté
delighted.
cette
If you aren't really
virtualité-là qui
sure,
n'était pas
it's
disponible
probably
avant.
something that you're not going to use. The next one then is another sort of relatively pro audio feature, which is support for audio filters. And these are things that you can use to alter the sound that you're getting out of your microphone. So audio processing basically, and various different filters. And they've now got a new window added into Ecamm. So if you come down to the sound levels window, down at the bottom, you're going to see this little sort of jigsaw piece here. Clicking on that, it's going to say show audio filters. And now you've got this new window, which is for audio filters. And here, what you can see is you've got a plus button down at the bottom. Clicking on plus, it's going to add a new filter, and it's going to say apply the effects to either the entire mix or a specific channel. So if I apply this to a specific channel, and then you can see we can apply it to the main mic here, the secondary mic, or interview guests. So I'm going to leave it plugged into or affecting the main mic. And what you'll notice, by the way, well, I should say what you won't notice is if you're just monitoring your regular microphone, as I'm doing, I'm basically monitoring my input into Ecamm through the Rodecaster. I'm not going to be able to hear what this is actually doing, but you will hear it in the recording. So just note that as you're playing around with this, you're going to want to be able to go back and listen and monitor this yourself. You can always use in the output menu here the audio monitor, and you can monitor that way. But just make sure you turn that off, because it's not actually a zero latency monitoring, and so that can cause issues with echo and things like that if you are using it for a live recording or for a Zoom call or things like that. So don't leave that on all of the time, but that's a way that you can actually hear what these things are doing. So what are they doing? Well, down at the bottom here, you can see you've got this option to add plugin, and this is where you can choose from all of these different plugins that are going to have some effect on your audio. There are too many here to go through. I will do a separate video which explains more about audio processing and the effects that these have, because what you'll find as we go and look into them, there's all sorts of parameters here.
Qui sont tous des logiciels séparés, c'est des plugins, donc ils ont chacun leur interface où tu peux contrôler exactement ce que tu veux avoir comme
graphic equalizer.
Oui, exactement.
That you can adjust, and if you're not used to what these things do, you might not know what to adjust to make it sound.
Dieu sait que c'est intéressant, parce que là, tu as un invité, Patrice, puis qui sonne comme Ecamm. Tu peux aller jouer un peu avec son son, puis
tu fais des tests, après ça, tu peux dire, lui, je vais l'améliorer, puis mon son va être meilleur. Ou tu y mets une voix de marde, puis tu te dis, on va avoir du fun.
Now about Ecamm for Zoom, because there's been some great new features that have been added in here as well, which as somebody who uses Ecamm for Zoom pretty much daily, I'm always either on coaching calls with people in our office hours sessions that I run with the Digital Stage Academy, or running webinars, workshops. I'm going to be running a big event in March that's obviously all going to be run through Ecamm for Zoom as well. That's the Digital Stage Summit. And so, yeah, some of these features are really great that we're seeing now added into build on the already fantastic Ecamm for Zoom integration. So a couple of these are around the Zoom Active Speaker.
Donc, il rajoute la fonction d'Active Speaker, ce qui fait que dans Ecamm, la personne qui parle va être mise à l'avant-plan si la caméra est ajoutée, bien évidemment, et va être disponible pendant un délai de minimum 3 secondes avant d'aller vers quelqu'un d'autre. Donc, un peu l'effet qu'on voit des fois quand la personne apparaît, quand elle commence à parler, mais à l'intérieur des cams pour broadcaster de Zoom vers Zoom ou vers ailleurs.
The way that
Wow.
works is that when you are bringing in people from Zoom into Ecamm, let's just come over here and I will show you this, not that one, this one. When you come into the Zoom, let me just kick this person out of the camera. So remove from cameras. Normally what happens is when you have a Zoom call going, and I've just got my, my little friend here, my imaginary friend in Ecamm for Zoom, you're going to see all the participants are in here. When you want to add them into the production, so let me just come over to this view with two people, and I've got a placeholder camera. One of them is me, and the other one, as you can see, is labeled as guest one. So what happens is if I click to add this person, it's going to add them as a camera. So then it's going to start capturing their video from Zoom, clicking on add to camera, and it's actually added him straight in there. But normally what would happen is, if I go to remove placeholder, normally what would happen is they would appear in here where you're going to see their video, and then you can click the three little dots and you can click apply to placeholder, sorry, assign to placeholder, I should say. And then when you click on guest one, for example, it's going to put them into all of the scenes, all of the positions in the scenes where you have the guest one placeholder. So if I go to another scene, which is 3 people, you'll see that here I've got placeholder 1 in the center, guest 2 is over here, and I'm obviously over on this side. So that is how, once you've assigned somebody to these guests, and by the way, you've got up to 10 guest placeholders, just note that you've got 8 for Zoom. The 10 actually applies to Ecamm Live interview mode, which is...
Donc, il faut comprendre qu'il y a deux façons d'avoir des rencontres multiples. On peut utiliser Zoom, il faut avoir un abonnement. La résolution dépend du type d'abonnement que vous avez, donc ça peut monter assez rapidement. Du côté des cams, on peut avoir à l'intérieur des cams, comme Patricia présentement, puis son écran, quand elle partage son écran, jusqu'à 10 personnes, incluant dans l'abonnement, ce qui fait que je peux avoir plusieurs personnes en même temps qui joignent ma session que je diffuse en privé ou que je diffuse de façon publique.
Slightly different. But in the AB section here for placeholder cameras, you will also see Zoom active speaker is just in there. And what that means is when you're on a Zoom call and somebody speaks, they become the Zoom active speaker, and they will just pop into that spot. What used to happen, though, is it would only apply, even though it's for the active speaker, it would only apply to people who had actually been added as a camera source. So it kind of was still a little bit clunky because it meant that if you were doing a Q&A, you still had to make sure that the person asking a question was at least added as a camera source, albeit not assigned to a particular placeholder camera. You just had to still add them as a source. That is now changed. The placeholder camera, the active speaker camera, I should say, now applies, if we go into our Zoom settings, it now applies to even non-added participants. Obviously, they still have to be in the meeting, but
Donc, n'importe qui est dans le meeting, qui a une caméra, s'ils sont l'active speaker, ils vont apparaître dans le placeholder.
They just don't need to be explicitly added as a camera source in this way. And so if I was to just say remove from cameras, you'd see that the participant is still there. He's not been added as a camera. However, if he was to come off mute and start speaking, then he would become the active speaker and would pop into here. So I nearly missed there that isolated video tracks will be created for those Zoom active speaker.
Donc, à partir de maintenant, dans Zoom, on peut avoir des feeds vidéo séparés qui vont être enregistrés localement de chacun des personnes qui de façon à pouvoir refaire un montage par la suite. Là. Donc, c'est vraiment cool.
So if you go into your settings, once again, and in here in the recording option, you've got the option to record isolated video for up to 3 of your cameras and also interview and Zoom guests. But now it does also say a separate one as well for the active speaker as well. So you will get a separate video and audio track for them as well. Was also in the recording menu to save a photo as an overlay. Now, at first, I thought, why would you want to do that? And then I tried it and I thought, I get it. So if you go into the recording menu, there is an option here to save photo. So if you want to create a photo from your from Ecamm, maybe a thumbnail or something like that, then you can do that. But you've got this one here, save
Donc,
photo
au lieu de
as an
faire un
overlay.
print screen,
And basically, as soon as
tu
you
dis
click
génère la
that,
photo,
it's
c'est
going to
fini.
take a snapshot of your Ecamm Live production, and it's just going to add it immediately as an overlay. So an example of this, let's say, thinking a little bit deviously for a moment, you're on a boring meeting and you just click on this button, you're there
Wow.
smiling away. And now what it's done is it's created a snapshot of your Ecamm, and then it's left that as an overlay. But as you can see, I'm behind there doing something else. Maybe I might be sleeping or whatever. It didn't quite work as planned here because obviously I was in live demo mode. So of course it captured absolutely everything. If I come out of live demo mode though for a moment and we just try that again, and I'll click this one, save photo as overlay. There we go. So now I've got a photo of me as an overlay. I'm not quite sure of the use case other than that, but that is what it is. So there we go. So let's see if I've just missed anything else off. We're getting down towards the bottom of the list
Très,
here.
très cool comme mise
A
à
few
jour. C'est
little
une
under the hood
majeure.
tweaks
Ouais,
here,
ouais.
which is Ecamm screen sharing now uses Screen Capture Kit for improved performance and compatibility. I'm just reading the update for you here at this point. Ecamm System Audio Capture no longer uses the System Audio plugin, and there's been updates to NDI to version 6.0.1, and it's also using the Zoom Meeting SDK 6.2.1 as well.
Donc maintenant, Ecamm utilise le Screen Capture Kit à l'intérieur de l'outil de développement d'Apple, qui était disponible depuis un certain temps et depuis 12.3, je pense, donc on peut voir. Ce qui fait que maintenant, toute la gestion des écrans, la gestion,
Partage.
c'est fait à partir directement de la librairie de développement. Il n'y a pas rien à développer par-dessus. Donc, c'est pour ça que, par exemple, le Screen Capture, ils ont réussi à le réutiliser. Mais vous allez voir aussi au niveau de l'audio, ils ont réutilisé toutes les fonctions d'audio que Apple a maintenant rendues disponibles aux développeurs. Donc, dans la prochaine image, et c'est vraiment cool. À partir de maintenant, on a accès au lieu
Signer des
d'avoir
programmes ou des... Wow.
ouais, au lieu d'avoir un système audio général qu'on avait avant, qui était la première option en haut, All System Audio, on est capable maintenant de dire quelle application je veux aller chercher le son pour le mettre dans ma diffusion, mais à l'intérieur des cams, au lieu de passer par la console de son du
Là,
Rodecaster.
j'entends mes amis dire ça fait tellement Windows, ça.
Ouais, effectivement.
Dans Windows, on a ça depuis longtemps.
Depuis
Je
longtemps.
sais.
Ben, de ce côté-là, ils n'avaient pas intégré toute la partie audio. Là, ils l'ont fait maintenant, ce qui fait que ça va nous faciliter la vie au lieu d'avoir accès. Parce que le risque du système audio, c'est si tu as quelque chose d'autre qui pop, tu vas l'entendre. Tandis que là, en disant c'est juste Safari ou c'est juste iMovie, ben, on s'assure que c'est juste là qu'on va entendre le son.
C'est nouveau dans Mac parce que je le testais la semaine passée, Patrice. Là, puis à peu près tous tes programmes peuvent avoir une source virtualisée, c'est-à-dire une source propre à chaque programme, à part un seul, Patrice.
Qui est?
Safari.
Bon, mais là, maintenant, c'est disponible.
Safari veut pas.
Donc, c'était notre
Très
revue
cool.
d'Ecamm 4.4. Il y a bien d'autres fonctionnalités dans la version précédente. Tout ça pour vous dire que vous
Allez
pouvez
voir sa chaîne.
aller voir sa chaîne, vous aurez plus de détails. Il va y avoir des vidéos plus en détail sur certains aspects. Il est vraiment bon, il y a beaucoup de contenu, donc je le recommande fortement, Alec. Il est très présent sur les pages Facebook de la version bêta et aussi de la communauté en général qui supporte l'ensemble des gens qui utilisent le logiciel.